Hey, g'day, welcome back. One of the most frequently neglected parts of filmmaking, especially as budgets go down, is prep. And understandably, producers want to save as much money as they can, so they want people on as short a period of time as possible. But prep is really where you save money in a production, especially in a lower budget production. I've had a lot of people ask me questions about what do I actually do when I do prep. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of my archives and pull out a lot of the notes that I used to make on paper and on my script and talk through some of the things I do in prep. Now, I'll add a caveat to this that for the last few years, I've been using digital notes and doing all my work digitally, so that I've got it all on an iPad and that I could take on set with me. And a few years back, an app came out called Scriptation, and I've been using exclusively Scriptation. Now, I'm not going to talk about Scriptation in this video. I'm going to do a separate video where I'll show you some of the stuff that I do in Scriptation and explain how I use that and what the benefits are and what a time saver that is. But in this video, I'm going to go through a lot of my older notes from my archives, show you what I do, and hopefully that will explain both how you go about approaching prep and the advantages of doing it. So let's get to it. Even more important than cameras or lenses or lighting or the characteristic curve or dynamic range or LUTs or anything else to do with shooting, prep to me is the single most important part of the filmmaking process. And as we go down into lower budgets, it's the one thing that tends to be washed aside, and people tend not to worry too much about it. They'll do the minimum amount of prep they need to for a show, but as your budget goes down, the prep should go up. Because you've got less time, you've got less money, you've got less resources, and so your prep needs to be even more thorough on a low budget film than it does on a big budget film, in a way, given the same complexity of production. So what I do is I put an enormous amount of time into prep, and quite often, whether I'm paid for prep or not, I'll sometimes put 3, 4 or 5 months of prep into it. I just finished a football film, and on that film I did about 6 months of prep. Now obviously that was unpaid, it wasn't a big budget film, but there was an enormous amount of blue screen and special effects and CGI involved in it, and that required a lot of work to have that all worked out and thoroughly organised before the film. And the way I work is I like to work with the director. I'll get the script and read the script, and I'll have my own ideas, but then I'll talk with the director, see what the director wants to do, see what his vision is, and he might give me some photographs or talk about some paintings, or he might ask me to look at a few films that have some of the characteristics that he wants in the story that I can use as a reference or as a guide to start springboarding off. And once I've got that information, I'll then go through the script and start breaking it down and writing notes into the script, drawing my own blocking diagrams. And if I've talked through blocking and staging with the director, just in general terms, I'll draw that out, even though I may not have seen the locations. But I like to keep copious notes. I make notes on everything. Anything that pops into my head goes into my script, and I like to be able to see all the thoughts that I've had all the way through a production, and definitely all the way through prep, because that keeps changing as we get closer to shooting. So every single thing that pops into my head goes down in note form. But also I like to draw little storyboard, just stick figure sketches to give as a bit of an idea of what the blocking and staging is going to look like, and especially after I've talked through and the director has a shot list or has a vague notion of what the shot list is going to be, then I can do little storyboards. And I also use a program called Storyboard Artist 7, And that has two-dimensional figures and also three-dimensional figures that are articulated, so you can move their arms and hands and their head and their bodies and put them in all sorts of different positions. And you can also do a little bit of 3D model lighting on them. So it gives me a bit of an idea of where I'm going to have the lights coming from, and it will jog my memory when I'm shooting. But it's also a good thing for the director to be able to say to him, look, yeah, this is sort of roughly how this is going to look, and I'm going to be lighting from this direction, and it gets the thing more solidified in his mind when he can see that. So and that's a great app. It's Storyboard Artist 7. It's really worth having, and it's very intuitive, very quick to learn. Another app that I use is called Shot Designer, and Shot Designer allows me to lay out the blocking for a shot with all the characters with different color symbols, and I can put props and windows and doors and everything else into the set, and where the camera will be, and I can even do animated camera moves, animated actors, so that the whole thing can be animated and exported as an MP4, and then you can give that to the crew, or give it to the director, or give it to the AD and say, okay, this is what we're going to be doing in this scene, and they can see exactly where the camera is going to be going and where the actors will be going. But all of that stuff is I do in prep, and I do it for everything. I do it whether it's a feature film or whether it's a TV show, because I like to go in knowing 100% what I'm up against. The other reason for doing that is that you encounter all the problems before you actually get on the set and encounter the problems. So you essentially don't have any, because you've come up against all the problems in your prep. You've solved them before you even get on set. So you just have nice smooth sailing. Obviously there's always things that go wrong that you can't account for, but 99% of the time you go in and you're so well organized that you don't have any problems at all. And if I've talked through blocking and staging with the director, just in general terms, I'll draw that out even though I may not have seen the locations. Once I get to see the locations, then obviously I can make those drawings a lot more specific to the locations that we're going to be shooting in. And of course, when we're on location, I'll check where the sun's going to be using one of the apps. I think the one I like to use is Sunseeker. And I can work out where the sun will be. Then I can talk to the AD about scheduling. I can talk to my grips and electrics about where the sun's going to be when we're shooting in a particular location, so I know if we've got to put up nets and scrims and stuff to block the sun out, or I can use the sun and diffuse it, or whatever it happens to be. But I can start working all that information into my prep, so that way before I even get onto the set, I've pretty much got that completely worked out. Now, as a DP, the same as an actor and same as a director, you've got to have a really clear image of that motion picture in your head before you start shooting. And that's obvious, because you're going to be shooting it all out of sequence, and if you don't have a very clear picture from start to finish of how that film's going to look, when you do start shooting out of sequence, you're not going to be able to maintain the visual style and keep the flow of the film and the dramatic intent of the lighting consistent. And for me, the idea of doing this much prep is that when you get onto the set, especially when you haven't got massive Hollywood budgets, you've got to be really efficient, and you've got to be fast, and you've got to know exactly what you're doing. You haven't got time to be walking on set and trying to work out how you're going to approach a particular shot or a scene or whatever. You've got to have that pretty well worked out well in advance, so that when you get onto the set, you can quickly tell the guys what you need them to do. The grips, the electrics, the camera crew will all get to work. Then you've got some time to sit back and look at what they're doing and say, okay, was my plan for this, was my visual style for this scene the correct the correct one. Are the shadows dark enough? Should they be a little bit darker, or are they too dark and they should be a little bit lighter? Do I need more highlights? Do I need less highlights? And you've got time to sit back, and as you see the set being lit up under your direction, you can make those subtle changes, and that's where you're actually being creative. So for me, without doing all that prep, you're losing an enormous amount of creative time on set. But what the prep does is, instead of me having 10 or 15 minutes to light a shot, I might only need 2 or 3 minutes to light the shot, and then I've got that other amount of time in which I can be creative and come up with different ideas and manipulate what I've sort of worked out in prep. Now, I'm getting into this here because in the course we're going to be going through how you actually do all that stuff, and you do all that planning and all that preparation beforehand, so that you've got a very clear picture of how the film is going to look from start to finish, in terms of contrast and light and shade, and where the highlights are going to fall, where the shadows are going to fall, what the tonal variation is going to be, what the colors are going to be like. All that's worked out well in advance. So for anyone who's heading off into a production shortly, prep, 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 prep. That's the most important thing. Like they say in real estate, it's location, location, location. In filmmaking, it's prep, prep, prep. So a lot of information in there, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an outline of how to go about approaching prep and the sort of things that I do for prep for my shows. But as I said earlier, those notes are based on when I was doing everything on paper scripts, and I don't do that anymore, because the problem with doing them on paper scripts is transferring your note from generation to generation, version to version. When new pages comes out, blue, pink, green pages come out, you've got to update the notes all the time. And as I said, I'm now using an application called Scriptation, and in the next video I'm going to talk about that and explain it. So in the meantime, if you haven't subscribed, click on that subscribe button. If you like what you've seen, give us a thumbs up. I always like that. Thanks for watching. See you soon.